Welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Wednesday, March 30th, 2022, and today we'll be talking about comic books and the paranormal. As always, to find all the episodes of the show, links to social media, ways to donate, and other ways to contact me, you can find all of that at the podcast page, which is salcidoparanormal.podbean.com. That's SALSIDO paranormal.podbean.com. Always happy to hear from you all, whether you have comments or questions or topic suggestions for shows, or if you have stories of experiences, whether they're your own or others you trust. Happy to either read those on the show or have you on the show with me so we can talk about them that way. As I said, we're covering comic books and the paranormal today. Looking into a major Marvel Comics event called House of M. And really excited for this one. I read it when it came out, and not long after it came out. And I think it's going to be fun to do this. So, but I'm not doing this alone today. I want to welcome Derek, the NightStocker, into the stream.
Hey, James. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, happy to have you here. And like I was saying in the chat here, loving all the images you're sharing here in the stream chat.
Oh, yeah.
Just for people that listen to these podcasts, of course, it's always great and I appreciate it. But if you want to see some of the images that come up with these episodes in the chat, you're welcome to join the Discord and be in here with us, and you can check all this stuff out because there really is a lot of good stuff, even not in the comic book related episodes. Sometimes it's just really neat to see what people are able to find.
Yeah, definitely.
So, but yeah, so I know you just recently finished reading this book. So what did you think of it?
Oh man, yeah. I just finished it today. I started it again on Monday. I actually own this one, so it was a good excuse for me to actually finally read it. But I loved it. I kind of known like what the story was going to be because during like one of the fun things we'll kind of talk about today, I think, like during the course of it, is how these different ideas are kind of like being peppered into the Marvel Cinematic Universe right now. So not only is it just like a cool event, but it's also like really it's been all these elements kind of matter a lot for like the pop culture right now, that the Marvel universe is the biggest thing in movies, and this ties in very closely. Like we might be seeing a lot of these elements going forward in the next Doctor Strange movie. So in WandaVision, the show that just came out, people were theorizing a lot that show was going to end with her, or how this story ended,
Right.
So seeing all these elements come, like seeing why these theories popped up and everything, it was really fun to read. But just the art and everything was really awesome, and this is like one of my favorite Bendis stories. I have a complicated relationship with Brian Michael Bendis. He's like like one of the first writers I really read a lot of his stuff for, but then I kind of like more recently when he made the move to DC, I don't love what he did with Superman, so I'm kind of irritated by him a little bit. But this is like this is a nice nice backtrack into like one of his better stories, one of his classic stories, and like why Bendis became one of the kings of comics, of modern comics and stuff. Like he really did a great job with the story, and how like I just love watching the X-Men and Avengers interact with each other. Like I think it's really cool. But it was fun, James. Thanks for convincing me to read this.
Yeah, and that is a thing to bring up too, along with this other thing that I said last couple of times, with these comic review shows, these event review shows. Anyone that reads comics will know these are stories that have technically started decades ago. So there is no easy beginning. There is no real starting point for this. It's just another event in a series of events. So just don't want to throw that out there. But yeah, the Avengers and the X-Men, they've always had kind of a complicated, just because there's so many in each group, I think. Yeah. They've always had a complicated relationship. Even just with uh, two of the Avengers that have been in the team in the comics, and then I know eventually in the movies, but in the comics, the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver, who are
Yeah.
Magneto's children.
Yep.
So that's a huge tie right there between the two teams.
Exactly. And that's kind of like the whole core of what brought the story together. It's that like something crazy was happening with Wanda, and then like Xavier had to bring in both of these teams because they're like she is a mutant, but also she is an Avenger. The Avengers know her more than mutants mutants do probably, you know. But also like I was kind of getting into like the backstory of the story and like how it kind of came up in the Marvel executive decisions and stuff. And they were saying how like at the time the X-Men continuity was just an absolute mess, just like really tough to get into, like a bunch of different volumes, like about the Uncanny X-Men, regular X-Men, like we talked about before, but it's a real mess to hop into. So when Joe Quesada took over like the executive whatever, he decided to like kind of do the soft reboot. Like Marvel doesn't really do full relaunches the same way DC does, where they do New 52 or Rebirth and just wipe the whole slate clean. So in this way, it kind of like for a few years really like condensed down the mutant continuity. Really like we'll get to it, but it really whittled down the mutant like it's there's hundreds of thousands of mutants, you know, and there's so many interweaving stories for decades and decades and time travel and all kinds of crazy stuff that it's like nearly impenetrable for like an outsider to come into. So this story kind of served that purpose as well as just being a cool story, you know. And also it might serve the same purpose in bringing the X-Men and mutants into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So it won't be exactly like this, but it'll use elements people are theorizing in order to bring mutants in. You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you want to get started, we got 8 issues to get through here. So.
Yeah. Well. Um. So just a couple of things before this starts here.
Yeah.
Is like you mentioned, the Avengers and the X-Men, they've all had their own things going on. The Avengers just recently had this big attack on their main team, on their main mansion, which, and I forget if it was mentioned before or not, but it was basically there was part of Wanda going crazy.
Yeah.
Is that she ended up turning on the Avengers, and so basically they were not even like really public anymore as a team for
Yeah.
a while
Basically,
there.
she had like killed Hawkeye. She made it so Tony lost like a big chunk of his money, so he couldn't even like fund the Avengers anymore. I think like Vision is dead at this point. Um, Somebody else is dead at this point, like in addition to Hawkeye. So they were like the old Avengers, they were calling them, were kind of like finished, and now like the new Avengers, also written by Brian Michael Bendis, was like being formed, and that's like with the X with Wolverine was in it. At this point, I think Spider-Man was in it at this point.
Right.
But yeah, Wanda had just like snapped and like killed her family basically, and like ruined the Avengers. She basically broke up the Avengers, and that was Avengers Disassembled was the name of that story, right? I haven't
Right.
actually read that one. Yeah.
Yeah, me either, but I've heard a lot of it's one of those stories
Yeah.
that was a major point and reference back I think to in a lot of cases for a while. Also with the X-Men, part of why the story starts out in Genosha, which apparently was for a while used as a home for a lot of different mutants. It was like a mutant
Yeah.
sanctuary kind of thing. And I remember this vaguely, that there was some kind of a massive sentinel attack on that island.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah,
And it
because
was
it's in ruins. When we first arrived there, it's a huge
yeah.
mess basically. Yeah.
Yep. And the only people living there are Wanda, because she's being treated basically by Xavier and Magneto, her father.
Yep.
We're trying to figure out what to do. Because the thing with that, it's not just a person, regular person, that is losing their mind. She has abilities to alter reality,
Yeah. Exactly.
basically.
That's a
And
huge like. Oh, sorry.
sorry, oh, you good?
No, no. That's a huge like addition to Wanda's power set, kind of like when I
Hmm.
was kind of reading through her backstory and stuff, or reading through like the narrative around her. She was kind of always a character, kind of really vague. She was just like the Scarlet Witch, and nobody really knew what that meant. Like the the Magneto father stuff wasn't really clear. Like, what was she a full mutant? Was she not? Kind of like the same way it is in the cinematic universe. Like, she doesn't have mutant origins yet in that. So she was always kind of being used as like a plot device. Like, basically whatever the Avengers needed to get out of their predicament that they were in, she just had that power. But then it wasn't until like right before this where they gave her the reality warping, reality altering power that really like flushed out how powerful she is and like where her power set comes from and stuff, which is cool. And it's different than the MCU where they just flushed out that the Scarlet Witch means she's the embodiment of chaos magic. Like, I don't think she's a mutant in that, at least not yet. That was like the revelation after WandaVision, is that like she is chaos magic, like personified, basically. So she has the same type of reality. Like, so she warped reality by creating this like Pleasantville, the same way she just had this trauma in Avengers of her husband dying, a Vision dying. World, this like fake reality. And basically that's the whole plot of WandaVision, is trying to like figure out how she did this, why she did this, and try to stop it. And then the revelation is that she is the embodiment of chaos magic and creates. So that's, yeah, and that kind of ties into this just by the reality warping stuff. But sorry, we can get, that was a tangent. We can just get right into this. We're gonna get
It's okay. Yeah. And so of course, so Xavier and Magneto are with Wanda, and of course Magneto, which partly he's not wrong, blames himself for twisting his kids basically through
Yeah.
his own insistence on he's basically right about mutants, and he really didn't pay a lot of attention to them as kids or even for years, even after they got older. So he blames himself for a lot of this. Also, and I didn't look up into this further, but apparently at one point Wanda had kids in some other storyline. And
I think, yeah, I'm not sure. I think it's another alternative reality or some
right,
some mind thing, some psychic thing where she had kids for a while and they were like taken from her. It just like adds to her trauma, you know?
yeah. So anyway, her powers are basically directly tied to her mind, her state of,
Yeah.
I guess, mental illness. I guess you could say. I'm trying to find the right word for it.
Yeah.
And so she ends up she keeps on changing reality, and Xavier and Magneto have to kind of intervene each time to have her put things right again. And so as all this is happening, Xavier arranges a meeting between the Avengers and the X-Men, or at least teams of them. Again, there are so many characters in each that it's you can't even have them all in the same building, I don't think.
Yeah.
But and so they basically get together to talk about what to do about Wanda, which in itself is an odd thing to even kind of say, and they even mention that in the story. It's like, it's how do they're basically there to decide what to do with her, or in one case, a couple of cases there, Wolverine and a couple others consider the idea of killing her.
Yeah, they're basically just saying, like, are we gonna, like, she's a universal threat. Like, we're the ones who have to take her out. If like we do it, like basically saying we know we have to do it. Like, are we gonna, pretty much?
Yeah, it's being pushed, but of course most of the group doesn't want to do that. This is
Yeah.
understandable given emotional ties to her among the different Avengers, and just in general, the idea of killing someone that is not intentionally threatening reality.
Yeah.
So, and so basically, the X-Men worry that if the word gets out that there's a mutant with that much power that is also going insane, it would send human mutant relations back to the Stone Age. So basically, reverse a lot of what the X-Men were trying to do for decades.
Yeah, exactly. And it's another like big. It's another big dynamic between the X-Men and the Avengers. That the Avengers are celebrities. They're considered like they're heroes. They're gods amongst people. Where the X-Men are considered freaks and they're outcasts. You know. So the idea of like a mutant destroying, like breaking up the Beatles, basically the superhero Beatles, like that would make mutant human relations even worse than they already are. So they're right about that for sure.
Right. So there is no real decision. They decide they have to go and talk to Wanda in person. But then of course back in Genosha, her Wanda's brother, who is Quicksilver, who basically his ability is super speed.
Yeah.
Goes back there to Genosha and rushes to Magneto to tell him that he was just in New York and heard the X-Men and the Avengers, and he assumes that these two teams are planning on killing Wanda.
Yeah.
Which they hadn't really decided that, but he's just so afraid, I think, that he jumps to that idea that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's how that goes for a little bit.
And Magneto's basically he responds like, "Well, yeah, like what do you want me to do? Like, yeah,
Right.
they are. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, she's my daughter, but yeah, she's a threat to the world." And he's like, "What do you mean? Like, you're the worst dad ever, basically."
Yeah, he even talks so fast that Magneto can't even understand him because
Yeah.
he's so freaked out.
Yeah.
Quicksilver is so freaked out. I remember that
Yeah,
part.
exactly. Yeah.
So Xavier, that's right. Xavier did go to New York to meet with the two groups. So they all go back to Genosha. But they find that Wanda is missing. And that's when different members of these two groups start to disappear in this wave of light that covers them all. And that's where things start to get even crazier. Once the light goes away, the world is different. The various members of these two teams are not living the same lives they were before. Spider-Man is a celebrity. He's married to Gwen Stacy. That's another thing in this world. There are people that were dead in the mainstream, or at least what we thought was the mainstream, but we'll get to that later. That are brought back somehow through Wanda's powers. Cyclops and Emma Frost are married, which they've been together in the comics for a while, but they hadn't actually been married. Yeah. And they're basically, Emma is like a psychologist, and I think Cyclops is like I don't know, I forget now. So kind of like bank, I forget now what he was. But and Doctor Strange is also a psychologist. Now for anyone that doesn't know, he's basically magic, sorcerer supreme for a while there.
Yeah. So in this, he's not even a magician at all. He's just like a regular human psychologist. Crazy.
Yep. And Carol Danvers is Captain Marvel, which she was kind of in hiding for a little while, but in this, she's basically America's most loved superhero.
Yeah. And like she was in the beginning of the story when like they all assemble at Avengers Tower or whatever. She's kind of joking with like Wonder Man or something, or
Falcon,
like Luke Cage or something like that. Yeah, she was like, "Oh, look, they actually invited me to an Avengers meeting. I'm surprised they didn't forget about me." Like she was like joking about how she's like not an important Avenger,
right.
And now in this world, she's the most important superhero.
Right.
Like she's the superhero.
So and I find this kind of funny that Gambit is a criminal, which he doesn't really.
Yeah, that was cool.
Do a lot in the story per se, but he's there.
That was cool.
Like a cameo appearance. Steve Rogers.
There's a lot of those cameos.
Yeah, Steve Rogers, Captain America, is basically an older man. Doesn't have the same physical appearance that he had.
Yeah, he wasn't frozen in the ice.
Right.
So he's like what he would be normally.
And so as all these things are happening, you see that none of them remember what was happening here. But then it gets to Wolverine.
Yeah.
Who wakes up and not only knows that everything is not right, he also has all of his lost memories from his life.
Yeah.
Now, this is a guy that is over a century old.
I know.
And has been manipulated, brainwashed, by so many different governments and people in so many different ways.
Yeah, so many times. That's like his whole identity is like the mind wipe part. It's like he doesn't really know who he is. He's trying to trust people. He's constantly like waking up and being told, "This is your home, this is your family," and then being told by somebody else, like, "No, they're trying to corrupt you. They're trying to yada yada, and he's constantly trying to battle with that. And now he like actually has a clear picture of the real world and like everything he didn't remember before. It's crazy.
Right. And the biggest thing of all, possibly, in this is that mutants are now in control of the world, basically.
Yeah.
Whereas before,
Yeah.
it was very much humans were in control.
Yeah. Homo superior has become superior.
Right. And Magneto rules the mutants and the humans, ruling the mutants. And it's him and also his kids. Now, interesting enough here, and this is one of those things I've never looked into, but it includes Scarlet Witch, so Wanda, and then Quicksilver, but also Polaris.
Yeah.
I guess that's not really such an important thing for this episode in a way. That's just me getting into
It was cool though. My only Polaris experience is really from the TV show The Gifted. Like I didn't really read much of her in the comics at all.
Oh, okay.
So, but it was cool like seeing her because she's like the main character of The Gifted.
Oh, okay. Huh. So, so Wolverine basically is the first one that realizes none of this is right. So he goes to different X-Men and Avengers, but and to try to tell them, look, this isn't right. He also can't find Professor X, Professor Xavier, who is basically the world's most powerful telepath. And he basically, I remember this, Wolverine actually went to the X Mansion, or what was the X Mansion. And
Oh yeah.
and there's some random, just regular person in the mansion, and Wolverine basically breaks in because he doesn't realize what's going on at first.
Yeah. He was like, who are you? Like, how long have you lived here? He's like, 15 years. Like, who's Charles Xavier? Like, what are you talking about?
Yes.
And he realizes that it's just some random house.
Yeah. So, so eventually he goes looking for more people, but he's confronted by this group of other fighters called the Red Guard, which are elite soldiers, mutant soldiers of that world's version of S.H.I.E.L.D.,
Yeah, that's cool.
which is basically a world peacekeeping or supposedly peacekeeping / espionage organization.
Yeah. It's like Marvel's intelligence apparatus, like all their collective like 3-letter agencies all rolled into one piece.
Yeah. So, and there's this huge team of these people that he knows, but none of them also remember the world the way it was.
And he's like the leader of them. They're all like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you freaking out? So he's basically like the Nick Fury of
said that too
of the Shield.
I remember that.
Yeah, he says that later on.
Yeah, I'm Nick Fury. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but Wolverine manages to escape and finds, basically this group known as the Human Resistance Movement, and it's led by Luke Cage, who is an Avenger in the comics. And he's been his own character as well. He's basically one of the newer Avengers, along with Spider-Man and Wolverine. Now, Cage is not a mutant. He didn't get his powers because of being born a mutant. It was through experiments, basically. And this is why this shows how much I've actually read of reference books. It was powers that he got through experiments in prison, I believe. With chemicals and different things that gave him his strength and his diamond hard skin, basically.
Yeah, it was prison.
Yeah. So, but Cage has gathered other human or non mutant crime fighters to protect regular people from House of M's basically totalitarian system, abuse of power, basically mutant superiority, and
like basically like they became what the X-Men were, like protecting what they call sapiens from the superior race, like from they become the minority in this world. So like it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Good stuff from Bendis, honestly. Good writing from Bendis.
Well, and there's even a scene in there, and it's just one of those where they just cut away with Hank Pym, who is or Henry Pym, who is an Avenger, is basically has made a few different things in the comics. Ant-Man, Goliath,
Yeah.
Different yellow. I think Yellow Jacket. Basically,
Yeah.
brilliant scientist, along with Beast, Henry McCoy from the X-Men, and it
Yeah.
shows them in this lab, and Beast is talking down to um, to I forget his name now.
Hank
Pym.
Pym.
There, thank you. Too many Henrys, Hanks.
Yeah, I know. Full Henry's. Yeah.
But he's basically Beast is talking down to Pym, and which is it just shows how much that world has changed. Because normally he is
Yeah.
not like that to people.
Pym's a jerk usually. Pym's like very full of himself
Yeah,
normally.
and
He's like thinks he's the smartest guy in
it
the
was the
room.
reverse. It was like Beast was being that way to Pym,
Yeah.
and so that was. But that just like I said, I think that just they did it to show how upside down things were in this world.
And they both worked for Tony Stark. Like, I loved those elements where like all the different scientists. Like the only one missing was Reed Richards. Having Hank Pym and Beast
Right.
like working for Stark Industries, and then there's a moment where Daredevil and She-Hulk were coming out of court because they were both lawyers together. Whatever. Like I like those little moments of the world coming together.
Yeah, if any of you listening ever get into comics and the graphic novels, the one I have has like this newspaper that was made to
Oh
go
yeah,
along
yeah,
with it.
yeah.
And there's just all these different little stories of just this alternate world. And it's really neat. And that's kind of I guess the core of what made me want to cover this story is this idea of these not only these alternate or parallel worlds, but the idea of someone being able to change the world to what they
I don't know.
want. Um,
And people having memories of that world before it was changed. Like that's the core of the Mandela effect idea. Is that like Mandela effect? The Mandela effects are people remembering the prior reality before whatever it was changed, whether it was CERN messing with something or two universes merging together or whatever the reason for it. It's that like something in reality has been warped, and these latent memories are like by like half the people remember it, half don't, which means you're from this reality or this reality, yada yada. And that's a really cool idea behind that, and especially how spoiler alert, like the last panel of the comic shows like two like a big splash page of two different planets, and that's kind of like what is always kind of shown with the Mandela effect, kind of two worlds merging, and like which version do you remember?
yeah. So anyway, Wolverine finds this group, and among them is Clint Barton, Hawkeye, who was one of the Avengers that was killed by the Scarlet Witch.
Yeah.
And so Wolverine is freaking out, which is kind of funny in a way because these characters die and come back so often. You would think they'd be like, "Oh, you're back, okay," but
Yeah.
that doesn't happen. So Wolverine explains what's going on, and he's kind of trying to figure all this out as he's going, and he thinks that the Scarlet Witch did this, and he believes that Magneto used her to create a world where everyone's deepest wish was granted, including Magneto's, which is
Yeah, he just runs the whole world.
So there's actually kind of funny scene here where nobody believes him right away, and also everyone is telling him you're being tracked right now. There's a tracker in your neck. You get rid of it. And Wolverine has no idea.
Oh yeah.
And eventually, Barton, Hawkeye, gets tired of waiting and
Yeah.
shoots Wolverine in the back of the neck with a arrow. And
Yeah, that was
and
cool.
of course,
It was
Wolverine
cool.
heals. Sorry.
Yeah, immediately. Yeah, that's what I think it would have been the reason for him remembering his memories, is that somehow his healing factor was able to like heal his mind or something, so he could. But that's not the direction that the story went. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But basically, after the tracker is disabled, and everyone is shocked that Wolverine gets back up again, because they don't remember
Yeah,
him,
exactly.
so they're thinking, oh, that guy's
Yeah.
dead.
Yeah, exactly.
But Cage reveals that they had met this Resistance had met this little girl before named Layla Miller, who told Cage almost exactly the same thing a few days ago.
Yeah.
And so Wolverine realizes, okay, this kid remembers the world the way it's supposed to be as well.
Yeah.
And it turns out she has this power to restore everyone's memories back by looking at them.
Yeah. It's a pretty convenient Bendis plot device to use in a story. That's classic Bendis. It worked well for the story, but she just like she didn't exist before that. She doesn't. I don't think she ever pops up after the
Oh
story's
no, she
over.
does.
Like so,
In the X-Men.
she only just
Sorry.
exists.
Oh yeah.
Oh, does she really? Oh, cool,
Yeah.
cool. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
But well, I think part of it too, though, is this. I think the thing I was wondering about her appearing, is if it was some part of Wanda knowing that this is all messed up, so I'm gonna put this person. I'm gonna make this person here that, if discovered, can possibly fix things.
Yeah, that was like kind of how Strange explained it to Wanda. Almost like she's like a back door in a computer or some type of like natural antibody that can like fix everything that's been undone. You know that like Wanda deep down knows it's bad, and she creates a person in order to fix the mistake that she knows she's making.
Right. So, but once the Wolverine and these other heroes have this girl, they start visiting other Avengers and X-Men in their new lives to basically wake them up.
That's cool.
And so basically, we already kind of described what a lot of these characters have been doing in this new life of theirs. But Hawkeye is not happy to hear about all this because he doesn't like the idea that he's dead.
He's dead. Yeah, he's like, he's pissed. I'd be pissed too.
So he actually separates from the group for a while there. But everyone that has been woken up decides to work together and go confront Wanda in Genosha, which has been completely turned around again. Just in this world, everything is different. Genosha now in this world is where Magneto and his family. It's like basically the world capital at this point.
Yeah. And I think it's described in like one of the like spin-off, like the House of M X-Men ones. But he basically, his dream is to like turn Genosha into a mutant like colony, or like a mutant safe haven for everybody. Like there's, rather than doing what like Doctor Doom does, or like different people when they take over the world as like a true like a true dictator or whatever. He makes it like kind of a paradise, you know, which is cool. Like he is like the House of Magnus, the House of M is like the villain in this world kind of, but like he turns Genosha into a utopia. It's like like what is created is a mutant utopia.
Right. He has his. He's not completely evil. That's the thing about Magneto. It's not that he just wants to destroy everything for the sake of that. It's just that he's willing to go a little bit too far in some ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
exactly.
so, and meanwhile in Genosha, Magneto is basically welcoming representatives from all around the world to commemorate the mutant triumph over humanity. And many characters are there that the X-Men know. Storm, the Black Panther, I believe, are a couple in that story.
Yeah.
Which is funny because they eventually become a
Namor.
couple anyway.
Oh yeah,
for a while.
That's cool.
Until anyway.
Yeah.
So, but
the coolest one was having Doctor Doom
yeah.
there, and then I love having Doctor Doom and Magneto like pair up together, or like kind of match up together. Like they're two kind of these like titans. But I guess in the Fantastic Four spinoff for this, Doctor Doom's whole plan was he was plotting like an overthrow of Magneto. Like he was, that was his entire, like they didn't touch on it in the main 8 issues, but his entire thing, the whole reason he was there is to like plot, and Magneto knew it, was to like plot the overthrow of Magneto. That was Doctor Doom's dream, was still to take over the world. That's his perfect life.
Yeah. So, basically this human resistance movement and all the other mutant heroes that have been woken up in the Avengers, they go to Genosha to face off against Magneto's group. And this is where things start to get interesting in that there's this huge battle between basically what are, in many cases, friends, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Family.
because
Yeah.
they haven't been woken up by Layla
Yeah.
Miller. And it's kind of hard. I mean, you can't have her out the middle of the battlefield because that's her only ability. She'd be, it wouldn't end well that way.
Yeah.
So, but
And they needed her to wake up Professor X still, so she's like very valuable.
she's being protected for sure.
Yeah.
And so the Scarlet Witch is there, and once this battle starts, she leaves the area. And eventually Doctor Strange finds her in a tower with her children that she's made again. And Doctor Strange tries to basically talks to Wanda and tries to figure out what's going on or why she did it. And Wanda reveals to him in a flashback that basically it turns out Quicksilver was the one that convinced Wanda to change the world, make everyone happy,
Exactly.
and in an almost perfect world.
So it like flashes back to those same panels from the beginning, where it's like what would you have me do? And he's like, save her, and then he goes to talk to Wanda and be like, you can stop this. Like they're either gonna kill you, or you can like give everyone everything they ever wanted. Like maybe the reason why you have these powers, maybe the reason why you were blessed with these powers, is to do this. Like that maybe this is your whole purpose. Like we joined the Avengers for this, to make the world a better place, and you can do it. And if you don't do it, I lose you forever. And he's like, yeah, crazy, emotional.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because the whole time everyone's thinking it was Magneto that did all this. And,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Exactly.
I mean, the reveal of that was just so good, just from a story
I know.
perspective.
Yeah.
And so Emma Frost also eventually joins the group here with Wanda and Doctor Strange. And she asks, Emma Frost is also a telepath, but not nearly on the level of Xavier. But she tells Doctor Strange to ask Wanda about Xavier. But before Wanda can answer, she's struck in the back by an arrow from Hawkeye.
Yeah. From
Who
Hawkeye.
starts to
Yeah. He's
basically
back.
he breaks down about his death in the real timeline. Basically, he's just really emotional about everything. And Hawkeye and the Scarlet Witch get into a fight, which is not very smart, considering her powers at this moment.
Yeah.
But he's killed again, and so basically, Wanda's son, or one of her sons, I think it's son and daughter. The son erases Hawkeye.
Now, these sons in the story, do they continue
I
later on?
don't.
Cause they have kids now. Like Wiccan, their two kids are like prominent young Avengers, and they're like have some major events in the comics like right now. And like one of them is Wiccan, and the other one is like has Quicksilver's powers. But they're Vision's kids.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But they're not. But they don't have the same reality like warping powers unless the son that does this is Wiccan, becomes Wiccan later
I
on.
don't
But
think so. I
I'm not
think
I'm
these
not
two
sure.
are more of
Yeah.
illusions from Wanda.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Yeah.
but yeah. So, and then the story cuts back to Magneto, confronting everyone, and Layla Miller is brought out at that point to reveal. Oh, we missed that part. I'm sorry. Missed that part about Layla Miller showing Magneto what happened, and which makes
Oh
him
yeah. Yeah.
pretty much lose
Oh
it.
yeah. Jeez. Oh yeah. Yeah. He gets pissed. He freaks out more than like
Yeah.
we ever see him freak out.
And he ends up in this fight in this anger at Quicksilver, ends up killing him. But of course, in comics,
Yeah.
and in this case, I guess it's kind of understandable. Wanda is like, just decides, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah.
You know, and she
Yeah.
she turns on
But
Magneto.
he's like, how dare you do this in
Yeah.
my name? He
Yeah.
comes down like he just like throws everything at him. He picks everything up and just chucks everything and just destroys him.
Yeah.
And then she just like, yeah, like you said, she just like, no, we're not having this, and like
Yeah.
resurrects him right away.
So, and she's freaking out too at everything that's happened.
Yeah.
And then she comes to this decision in the story where she uses her powers basically one last time and says 3 words: "No more mutants."
Yeah.
And the world goes
Epic.
turns white again with that white light again, which is really interesting. It's like a computer simulation being reset in a way.
Exactly. Or like we've been talking about, like the white light that you see like when you die, like the whole trick by the light aspect or whatever. Or just the idea of like an all engulfing white light that takes you to another
Yeah.
realm, another world.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, and that's basically where like there's a ton of consequences in this story, from the story. So obviously, like I said, the biggest thing is most of the world's mutant. There are millions of mutants before, and now there's only hundreds.
Yeah. Like a
That's right.
198
Yeah,
or something
the
like that.
199 or something like that. I
Yeah.
think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why they didn't get involved in Civil War.
Right.
Because like Emma Frost is like, we just don't have enough mutants. We can't sacrifice mutants to fight your stupid Tony Stark versus Captain America war. Like we're not here for you anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. Because yeah. So of course Wolverine still has all those memories, which is a major thing. There's, like I said, there's a lot of consequences, but basically that's where the whole time or the reality warping part of the story ends overall. Except I did see here in this article I found about this event that the comics later on in the comics details were put in that hinted that this all happened in yet another Marvel universe, another parallel universe. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like before, like they made it seem like she rewrote reality, but like later they made it realize that it's just like an alternate reality, and then Wolverine's like mind was like brought over from the main continuity, which allowed him to remember
okay,
for some reason.
yeah,
It didn't explain like how that happened, but that was the explanation
okay,
that I
yeah.
read from it.
So but that's the event. But it was I just thought this was a really good one to cover because of the whole way the universe or the reality. We don't really know for sure. That's another interesting thing to me that I wondered about was the rest of the universe changed? If he would have gone to other planets,
Yeah,
but then it doesn't make sense because she wouldn't really care about other planets.
but it must though, right? I mean, there's so much. I don't know. You would think like so many of the powers. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't thought about it. I mean, at one point in the story, during that House of M gala they had, they bring the Kree, like a Kree
Okay.
representative. So like the Kree are
Oh,
subservient
okay. I
to
forgot about
Magneto in
that.
this
Yes,
world.
that's right. So yeah,
Yeah,
maybe it was. Yeah,
which is
maybe it
interesting.
was.
Yeah, yeah. But that just goes to show like how powerful she is. That just like in a moment she can change infinity. Like the universe is infinite, and she can
Yeah.
just change it all.
Yep.
Crazy. But like one cool synchronicity is that so like the story ends with this giant like a red ribbon, it says in the article, but it's this giant like red light like over the planet. And then recently in the news there was this like red light appearing over different parts of the world in the real world, like over
Wow.
Egypt. Like Ryan Gable did a show about it last night, and like over Texas and over a couple of, like 3 or 4 different places. This weird ominous red light that nobody
Okay.
knows what it is. This is like
That's
this
interesting
past
because we've
week.
had
Yeah.
this episode planned now for almost a month.
For a long time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Little
Also,
synchronicity
the
there
red
for sure.
light thing.
Yeah.
It's. I wonder if that is, and I think it is, a hint. Now this isn't. It's kind of more comic stuff, but it's a hint at later events.
Yeah.
I think. Could it be
what is it?
Phoenix? Could it be the Phoenix Force?
Oh, oh, yeah, maybe, yeah,
Because that does come back into play in the comics
yeah.
later on. So then,
Is there
yeah.
ever a big is there ever a big Phoenix versus peak Wanda battle at any
Well,
point? Like,
that's part of Avengers versus X-Men where they do meet. Yeah.
oh
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, we,
we should
we
do
can
that at
do
some point.
Avengers versus X-Men at some point, I think. We'll see. We have to look into it
Yeah,
more.
that'd
Yeah,
be
I think
cool.
we could do it because it does involve cosmic forces and what happens when they get split up. And yeah, I think we could do that.
Yeah.
I think we could do that. So, interesting here. I'm just looking at the chat. Apox says I saw the red light thing in the news or in the. I'm just wondering, Apoc, if you saw it in the news or if just or if you actually saw it in the sky. But either way, that's a heck of a timing thing right there.
I'm gonna post a link in
Okay.
the chat right now. Optical phenomenon, lights Texas red sky. But it happened like in multiple places in Egypt and
Okay.
a couple other places. It's pretty creepy, but yeah, that's a definite synchronicity for sure.
Apoc says saw it on Mike's server over in Troubled Minds. So, but okay. But yeah, so that makes you wonder if that's some kind of a something cosmic in a way in the real world. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, people have been saying that something is up with reality, like from different perspectives, whether it's we're transitioning from the third dimension to the fifth dimension, or whether there's Mandela effect with worlds merging, or whether the simulation is breaking down. From all different types of paradigms, people are saying that like something is up with reality. So it's very synchronistic that we're doing this show or this episode like that ends with reality warping using some type of or has some type of red light like symptom to it as this red light is being shown all over
Yeah,
the
well,
world.
that
That's
is
pretty cool.
that's amazing. That's it's so funny how these comic episodes have been working out. Like you've been pointing out, the
I know for
synchronicities
sure.
there.
Yeah.
So I'm glad we were able to get that done in one episode. Um, that's a good
Oh,
thing.
I know. No, that was fun. That was good. Thank you again for having me do it. It's a great excuse for me to finally read it. You know, I have all these stories that I haven't actually like I own but I haven't read, so it's fun to be able to
Oh,
crank
no
them out and talk
problem.
about them
I'm
with you.
looking forward to figuring out what we're gonna do next. We'll talk about that some other time here.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we can brainstorm. And if anybody has any requests, if anybody in the audience like has any favorite comics that they know and love and want to hear us talk about, like for
Yeah.
sure.
So I'm looking at the chat here again. Apoc says red has a range of symbolic meanings through many different cultures, including life, health, vigor, war, courage, anger, love, religious fervor. The common thread is that all of these require passion. Okay.
Yeah. Passion, like what comes from the trauma of losing your kids or losing your brother, like the same passion that Wanda has, which changes reality, like the same emotions, the same passion,
Yeah, it
same
could be
trauma,
because
like
she's very much.
yeah.
I mean, very much emotional in this whole thing. Everything is really
Yeah.
tied to that.
I mean, it's very similar to Phoenix in that way. Like the trauma and the mental anguish is what fuels the power. I mean, it's very similar to like a lot of the different superheroes. Like they were talking to Doctor like when we see Doctor Strange as a psychologist, he was
Mm.
talking to Sentry, who like has like split personality. He's like the Superman of the Marvel universe, but his like alter ego, his like
Yes.
he has the
Yep.
void inside him, which is this like dark trauma that's also um, as powerful or if not more powerful than like that was one commentary I was reading about it, like somebody like reviewing the story, that like the fact that the void exists in this reality, the fact that like Wanda couldn't give Sentry his dream reality of getting rid of the void means that the void is too powerful for
Mm.
Wanda to get rid of. That like which is pretty cool. But like that all that same element of this trauma, that emotion, it's the same thing with Stranger Things, where 11, which she's like it requires her a lot of mental anguish and a lot of like she's basically like the Phoenix. It's that trope uh is ties into a lot of stuff. That's like the whole point. That's the whole point of MK Ultra, like using this trauma to induce these like powers, these psychic abilities and stuff. You know.
Well,
was magic.
and even in the X-Men, the
Cool.
comics, in many cases, many mutants, when they get their powers, it's because of trauma or heightened emotions in their, I believe, their teenage years. In many cases, I've read that somewhere. So,
Yeah.
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 So, well, that was fun. I knew it would be.
Yeah, that was fun, James.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me do it. Yeah, we can
Yeah,
brainstorm
we
and
got a little bit of
plan the
time
next
here.
one.
We'll get that figured out within the next week, so we have a few weeks
Yeah.
to get into it. But yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
All right.
definitely.
Well, thank you again for being here, Derek. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll take off so you can
Oh,
end the
no
stream.
problem.
But
Yeah,
thank you
just
again,
if you
James. That was
just want
fun.
to mute up, and then we'll be good from there. So there we go. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, thank you all for being here. I know there wasn't a lot to chat about in this one particularly, but I still appreciate it, everyone being here for this. And we'll be doing this again next month at some point, I believe, before we kind of figured on when possible doing this on the last Wednesday of the month. So, yeah, that's the plan for that. Tomorrow I'll be reviewing another book, a novel, Black House by Stephen King and Peter Straub, sequel to The Talisman, which I reviewed last week. And then that reminds me, I have research to do for Friday's episode, which is just a brief one-episode look into some of the stranger cases of the missing 411. That whole set of cases and disappearances. So that's going to be Friday. And then we'll be shifting the schedule a little bit starting next week as far as book review days. But I'll make sure I mention that once we get started with that. So thank you all again for all your support. And I will talk to you all tomorrow night on the next episode of Salcedo Paranormal. Take care.